Guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. This is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. Tonight, we're going to talk about one of the most important videos I think I've ever done. So if you can, make sure to share this. Make sure to give this a like. Make sure, you don't have to do it right now. Watch the thing first. Make sure it's something you actually do like. But we're going to talk about Stoicism tonight. And Stoicism, I found a really good article and a really good read-through. It's from the Daily Stoic, and I'll leave a link of this down below. But what's Stoicism, a good way to think about it, or a good just TLDR, too long didn't read, is take, for example, when you're sad, or when you're frustrated, or when you're angry, or you're experiencing some emotion. A lot of times people just stew in it, and they just live with it, and they say, oh, I need to get over this, but then they try to distract themselves, and they try to find other exterior things. And same thing could be said for joy and happiness, but usually when you're in a joyous, happy place, you don't give it much thought. Where if you're depressed or bummed out or angry or frustrated, that tends to sit on your mind much longer. Unfortunately, negative emotions sit with you longer than good ones do. But Stoicism is taking the idea of, okay, let me try to come to an understanding of not just what happened and why it makes you feel this way. Because a lot of times you may say, you wake up, you just feel, oh man, I'm really bummed out today. But you don't know why. And so Stoicism is taking various things in your life, your intelligence, your wisdom, your ability to critically think, and say, okay, let me start analyzing, why do I feel this way? How did I get in this place? And then you can go so far as to say, what will get me out of this place? But you can also take it a step deeper and say to yourself, all right, now, what is sadness to me? What defines sadness to me? What is it that I find that I'm thinking about when I think about sadness or anything else? And you start going down these, and it's very hard to explain. I think this article does a good job of it. But you start going down layers and stripping away until you find the core of who you are. It's a difficult challenge. It's not easy to do, and not everybody can do it. But those that can kind of get this down and ironed out and start thinking this way will have a much better life. You'll oftentimes hear quotes from some of the Stoics, and you say, wow, that's really deep. But again, it has layers underneath there. And I'm hoping that this will help you address maybe your frustrations, your sadness, your anger. And when you can work through these things, you can find ways to remove them from your life. And once you've removed them from your life, you're going to find that you will not always be happy. I am not always happy. No one is ever always happy or smiling, and the people that say I'm always awesome they're not being truthful. But it allows you to find a place of peace in your life. It allows you to find a place of comfort in your life. And so instead of having extremely highs and extremely low lows, you end up having kind of a baseline here where there's nothing lower, and then you have the good to build upon that. How high above that really depends on you. So let's get reading, and then I'll talk about this as we go. If you can't make it through the whole thing because it's long, save it, put it in, save it in your to watch later or something like that, and come back to it. But I think this is important for a lot of you guys out there, young or old, it doesn't matter. And I'll skip over some of the points that aren't relevant, but again, I'll leave the links below. It says, for those of us who live our lives in the real world, there's one branch of philosophy created just for us, Stoicism. It's a philosophy designed to make us more resilient, happier, more virtuous, and more wise. And as a result, better people, better parents, and better professionals. Stoicism has been a common thread through some of history's greatest leaders. It has been practiced by kings, presidents, artists, writers, entrepreneurs, such as Marcus Aurelius, Frederick the Great, Montaigne, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill, Theodore Roosevelt, General James Mattis, just to name a few, were all influenced by Stoic philosophy. So what is Stoicism? Who are the Stoics? How can you be a Stoic? We answer these questions and more, so on and so forth. And I'm going to move down through here. I'm going to read the what is Stoicism part. I don't know if hopefully it'll give you a better idea than how I've related it. One of Seneca's quotes is, "Of all the people, only those are at leisure who make time for philosophy. Only they truly live. Not satisfied to merely keep good watch over their own days, they annex every age to their own. All the harvest of the past is added to their store. Meaning you learn history, you learn great thoughts of other men, you learn about the world around you, and you have those to kind of tuck away and use those experiences or that knowledge as your own. It's one of the reasons why I've been such a proponent of travel. And many people say, I'm not into traveling. But whether it was the 30 days in Iceland that I spent alone or the majority of the time that I spent in New Zealand completely alone, just walking. Sometimes I'd thumb a ride for a little while, but other times I'd walk. In the course of 1 year of my travels, I logged in about 3,800 miles just on my own 2 feet. So in other words, I could have gone from like the tip of Florida all the way up and over to northern Washington, or actually maybe even up towards Alaska, just on my feet. And during that year, I spent a lot of time in my head. And I spent time thinking about my life, thinking about my past discretions, my mistakes, my joys, how I'm a better person for it, how I wouldn't be the person I am today without all the bad and the good that's happened to me in the past. And when you can start putting these things in categories and you start putting them in boxes and you start putting them, instead of just a madness of emotion, you can put them into things that you can think about and break down and analyze, you'll find that your life starts to make a little sense. And then by straightening out your past and by straightening out the bads and the goods that have happened to you, and by learning what others before you have learned, it gives you an idea of what to look forward to and maybe how to proceed towards your future. They say the private diaries of one of Rome's greatest emperors, the personal letters of one of Rome's best playwrights and wisest power brokers, the lectures of a former slave in exile turned influential teacher, against all odds, some 2 millennia later, these incredible documents survive. They contain some of the greatest wisdom in the history of the world, and together they constitute the bedrock of what is known as Stoicism, an ancient philosophy that was once one of the most popular civic disciplines in the West, practiced by the rich and the impoverished, the powerful and the struggling, alike, and the pursuit of good life. Except to the most avid seekers of wisdom, Stoicism is either unknown or misunderstood. To the average person, this vibrant, action-oriented, and paradigm-shifting way of living has become shorthand for emotionlessness. Given the fact that the mere mention of philosophy makes most nervous or bored, Stoic philosophy on the surface sounds like the last thing anyone would want to learn about, let alone urgently need in the course of daily life. As we've talked before, I have a good laugh. I enjoy laughing. I enjoy time with my friends. And I don't have a large circle of friends. I can count them on one hand, and they all live, probably the closest one is 500 or 600 miles away. But you also notice I can cover many of the stories that I talk about on this channel, no matter how crazy, no matter how frustrating. And yes, some of that frustration bleeds through, but very little of it affects my heart or my long-term. When I read a frustrating story and I go, oh, this is so ridiculous. I can't believe the civilization's like this. Okay, I'm done with the internet. Click, and I walk away. By the time I hit that door right there, it's off my mind. It's away. Because I've learned that there's only so much the outside influences of the world can affect me. And hopefully, some of you guys will learn how to do that through Stoicism. It would be hard to find a word that dealt a greater injustice at the hands of the English language than Stoic. In its rightful place, Stoicism is a tool in the pursuit of self-mastery, perseverance, and wisdom, something one uses to live a great life rather than some esoteric field of academic inquiry. Certainly many of history's greatest minds not only understood Stoicism for what it truly is, they sought it out. George Washington, Walt Whitman, Frederick the Great, Eugene Delacroix, Adam Smith, Immanuel Kant, Thomas Jefferson, Matthew Android, Ambrose Bierce, Theodore Roosevelt, William Alexander Percy, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Each read, studied, quoted, or admired the Stoics. The ancient Stoics themselves were no slouches. The names you encounter on this site, our daily email medications, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, Epictetus, I think that's how you pronounce it, Seneca, belonged to, respectively, a Roman emperor, former slave who triumphed to become an influential lecturer and friend of the Emperor Hadrian, and a famous playwright and political advisor. What have all these countless other great men and women found within Stoicism that others missed? A great deal. Primarily, that provides much needed strength, wisdom, and stamina for all of life's challenges. You know, I talk a lot about in college education today, and if you were to ask me, I think were you to go to college and just learn mathematics, engineering, or something of a more physical line trait, diesel, engine, mechanic repair, HVAC, things like that. When you learn an actual technical trade and then go apprentice in it and put that to work, I think there is great value in that. But as far as college goes today, they have taken away the right of the free speech. There are no political debates anymore. You can't have a conservative rationally talk to someone that is a far left individual, although liberals seem to do well right in the middle. I kind of consider myself a kind of a libertarian liberal, that is. Although nowadays, I suppose I've shifted right a little bit with age. But the ability to talk and rationally think about ideas and work through them is being lost at an exceptionally fast rate. Look at politics today. Both sides now, no matter which side you fall upon, are at each other's throats, calling each other's names, saying each other is this word or that word, and we've debased ourselves. So I think that being able to be stoic allows you to see things from the left side, the right side, the center side, from all different political views, from all different views, including those of women, if you're a man, or including those of men, if you're a woman. Now, many times, and I've heard this on many of my videos and comments, guys will say, oh, you're being like this, why listen to women, or why? As you expand your knowledge of the world, you get to see things from all sides. And that truly lets you choose what is right for you and what isn't, instead of listening to anyone else. I think we've lost that ability. And I think, should you find that, again, you will find peace and happiness and understanding, knowing what every fellow human that you encounter may be going through, their suffers, their strifes, their joys. And I think in the long run, it will definitely make you happier. You don't have to be on a side anymore. Now, sometimes you may have to choose a side for something, but you can walk the middle of the road for the rest of your life. And for some people, that's not right. They want to be super passionate about things, and they like getting fired up and passionate about things, and that's okay. But Stoicism is knowing where that middle ground is, where it's safe, where it's comfortable, and then you can choose small excursions to kind of step out and champion your individual causes, always knowing to make it back to the center. They say how Stoicism began and who were the Stoic philosophers, and they list them out here. I'm going to jump over this, but I want you guys to go back and read these sections, if you will, and maybe don't necessarily download quotes by them because they're meaningless. Download the books about them and what they mean and what some of their lessons were, because that's where the real gems lie, not so much in a beautiful quote that makes you feel something for 30 seconds and then you go about your day. What are the 4 virtues of Stoicism? Courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. Now, how many of you turn on the news, the TV, float through social media, or watch something on YouTube or TV, and how many of you notice courage, temperance, justice, or wisdom? Now, courage you may not see in everyday actions, but temperance you don't see much of anymore. Justice, we're not doing very well in that department when you see some of the odd crimes that are being, the way the court system is held against men and not women as much, shorter sentences for women versus men. There isn't justice. And we notice this. That's why you're here watching some of my videos that complain about these things. And then wisdom. And you can, I know you all agree that there seems to be quite a lack of wisdom in the world today. They are the most essential values in Stoic philosophy. If at some point in your life, Marcus Aurelius wrote, you should come across anything better than justice, truth, self-control, and courage, it must be an extraordinary thing indeed. That was almost 20 centuries ago. We have discovered a lot of things since, automobiles, the internet, cures for diseases that were previously a death sentence. We have yet to find anything better. Is there anything better than being brave, than modernation and sobriety, than doing what's right, than truth and understanding? No, we have not. It's unlikely we ever will. Everything we face in life is an opportunity to respond with these 4 traits. You know, when I talk about this and you say, well, today, do you really have to be brave? And you might say, no, not really. There's nothing I need to be brave about. But what about, I'll use an example that all of you know. This may not be the best one, but let's say that you're in a company and you disagree with their policies and they have a certain message they put out and you feel that message is wrong. Are you brave enough to speak out against it, even though you may lose your job? Are you brave enough to quit that company if they disagree with your stance on something? A good example is let's say that you're a Christian and they don't value or you don't have the same values as a company. Do you just say that's not important enough to me to stand up for? Or do you say my convictions and my values are so strong, I can't work here, and you leave? That does take some bravado. That does take some courage to say. Moderation and sobriety. Now, obviously, we all imbibe and we enjoy our cold drinks occasionally, but everything in moderation simply means that whether you spend time doing your job, spend time doing your hobby, spend time on anything, keeping it to a limited amount of time so that you don't, you can be a master of one or jack. The expression is master of none, jack of all trades, master of none is the expression. But the jack of all trades, master of none really is kind of a good way to look at this, in that if you're, and I used this as an example one time, and when you guys found fault with it and complained a little bit, but let's say I'm really good and I'm a top tier, video game player on Twitch, and I make $1 million a year playing video games, and I'm really good at that. That is awesome. But if you can't also at that point have good social skills with people that are outside of your realm, know how to manage your own finances, repair your car. So for example, if you get a flat tire on the side of the road and you don't know how to jack up and remove your tire, it will hamper your progress through life. And one of the best things to help you be confident in life is to know a lot about, or a little about a lot, maybe would be a good way to put that. One of the things my father taught me is he taught me how to run electricity, both AC, DC, whether it's in a home or in a vehicle. And he taught me about fixing things around the house, reshingling a roof, fixing plumbing. And this is just one example of many, but by having all that, when something goes wrong and there isn't a repair person available, you don't have to worry. You can simply go out and fix it yourself, or you know what you need to do. Or if you don't know what you do, if you don't know what to do on something, you've done enough things that you have confidence to try to tackle it yourself. That would be a good way to look at moderation. And then doing what's right. Many times there's 2 ways that this is important. Doing what's right for you, and doing what's right for you and your loved ones, those that you care about, and doing what's right for society. Now, you can say today, well, in many of my videos say, I do what's best for me and I look out for me, and I'm not going to do so much for society. But one thing I can do to support society is not be a menace to society, not be a problem by keeping to myself, by being the lord of my own realm, so to speak. I'm not out there causing problems. And the people that are out, whether it's currently rioting or people that are going out and committing crimes, you're not doing what's right because you're taking others' choices and their livelihood away from them. Maybe that's a good way to think about that. And then lastly, is there anything better than truth and understanding? There's the truth of science, but even that now gets muddled a little bit. But 2 + 2 will always equal 4. And knowing that there are certain things that are truths by the laws of nature, truths that are what is currently accepted in society, and understanding how all that can relate to you, I think is very important as well. If you read Cormac McCarthy's dark and beautiful novel, All the Pretty Horses, you'll remember the key question that Emilio Perez asked John Grady, one that cuts to the core of life and what we all must do to live a life worth living. He says, The world wants to know if you have cojones, if you are brave. The Stoics might have phrased this a bit differently. Seneca would have said that he actually pitied people who had never experienced misfortune. You have passed through life without an opponent, he said. No one can ever know what you are capable of, not even you. The world wants to know what category to put you in, which is why it will occasionally send difficult situations your way. Think of these not as inconveniences or even tragedies, but as opportunities, as questions to answers. Do I have cojones? Am I brave? Am I going to face this problem or run away from it? Will I stand up or will I be rolled over? Let your actions etch a response in the record and let them remind you of why courage is the most important thing. Courage is a tough one today. It's the ability to say no, to stand up for yourself, to look out for yourself despite what everyone else thinks is best for you. It's the ability to walk away from the girl that's not treating you so well. It's the ability to stand up for yourself in the face of adversity, to disagree when your cores, your principles, and your beliefs are being challenged. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't learn something from this, and it doesn't mean that you can't change your mind. But it also means you can't be a pushover, that you actually stand up for things that you care for. It seems today that people are too easily swayed by what popular people think or what the mainstream media thinks or what the news tells you to think. But it takes a pair of brass stones to be able to step up and say, you know something, I'm not okay with this. And it can be handled well, and sometimes it can be handled not so well. And I know in my past, I've sometimes not handled it so well. But if you stand for what you care for, then that will matter. It's also being brave enough to say, you know what, maybe I will be facing this life alone. That's a tough one for a lot of us to say, you know something, I might be alone my entire life. I'm never going to have a backup plan. I'm never going to have a woman that I know will stand by my side. Someday my family, my parents, my sister, those people may die. Well, my parents will definitely. They may die and leave me, and I will no longer have their support. To know that you're, as a man at least, facing the world alone and that really no one cares about you, that's tough. That's a tough thing to face. You know, death itself is a tough thing to face. I had a good friend of mine. His name was John, and we used to ride motorcycle together. And he and I, we'd go out in big groups. We had 10, 15 riders sometimes. And he and I would hang towards the back. We were called cleanup. Those are the last couple guys in a big pack of motorcycles. And so what we would do is as we're coming up to a corner or where there'd be a light, especially if there were, 40 or 50 of us in a pack, we'd zip up along the pack, get at the front, and then we'd pull out into traffic when it was safe. I mean, just at a stop sign or something like that. We'd pull up when it was safe, and we'd be blockers. And that way all the motorcycles could go through and not get split up by traffic lights or by stop signs. And then we would follow behind the rest of the group. And he said, you know, I always like being cleanup because I like to make sure everybody's safe and everything's going along well. And I don't have any problems going slow. And he was my age, maybe a year or two older. And one day he went out riding with some other friends of mine, or ex-friends, I guess I should say, people I don't ride motorcycle with anymore. And they all had sports bikes, and they were going down back roads at about 90 miles an hour when a speed limit was about 45. And he and the other group hit a patch of grass or something that someone had mowed, and it threw it out into the road. The other riders made it through the corner. He did not, and he high-sided, which is the motorcycle as it's upright. You're turning into a corner like this, and it catches and flips upright and tosses him, and he must have gone a couple 100 feet. And he broke his back in 3 places and his neck. And he was laying in the hospital, and he was paralyzed from the neck down, and he had to have a breathing machine. They had given him a trach for a while. And he decided to take it out, and his diaphragm was not strong enough because I'm not sure the specifics of it, whether he had to use his lungs or his diaphragm, but they said he wouldn't last 24 hours without being on this breathing machine because his muscles would tire and he would basically suffocate. And he decided to have that taken out and to allow himself to expire. And I was sitting here with him in the last day, and we were sharing some tears and stuff. And he said, He said, you've always told me to be smart in your riding. And he said, and I always said the same thing, but I got stupid, and I decided to show off a little bit and try to hang with these other guys that might have been a little more aggressive riders than I'm used to. And I paid the price for it. And I said, how do you feel about this? I mean, are you sure you don't want to take a little more time on this machine? And he said, I can never ride motorcycle again. I can never, make love again. I can never walk again. He said, what good is it to lay in a room on a machine just being alive? And I asked him if he was scared. And he said, I'm not really. He said, I've always kind of gone through life knowing the decisions that I make, and this is a decision I wasn't ready for, but I'm going to have to face this, but this is the way I want to go. And, visiting time was over, and the next day we got the news that he had passed. But he stood up for what he believed in. He made a mistake. He owned it, and then he lost his life to it. That, to me, takes bravery. It takes courage to be able to realize the mistakes that you make in life. In many ways, I felt sorry for him, and I was very angry at him because he made that decision, and he took himself out, and that made me very angry at him. But the whole point is that everybody, all the motorcycle friends and the riders that loved him and knew him, they all, and I did not say this, I was at the party that they had a party that was passing. Party is the wrong word, a get-together for his passing. And they put up a plaque in the coffee shop that one of the bikers owns. And they said, we're going to always remember John, and we'll have these events for him. And, he was such a great guy and meaningful. And the young guys that he went out riding with that day said, man, I really need to rethink the decisions I make in life. And, a couple months go by and they're back out riding quickly, and the plaque of John gathers dust. The whole point is the world is not going to remember you. Even if you're notable, like these Stoics are, your words may continue on, but the world will forget about you. And to be able to know that, and know that you may end up being alone and facing the trials and tribulations on your own, can scare some people, and it can depress some people. But the truth of it is, once you can master that, it no longer has control over you, and you can live your life freely without having any fear. It's I'll move on, but it's something that you should definitely think about very deeply. Temperance. Of course, life is not so simple as to say that courage is all that counts. While everyone would admit that courage is essential, we are also all well aware of people whose bravery turns to recklessness and becomes a fault when they begin to endanger themselves and others. That would have been John. John did not have temperance in his decision the way he rode that day. This is where Aristotle comes in. Aristotle actually used courage as the main example of his famous metaphor of a golden mean. On one end of the spectrum, he said, there was cowardice. That's a deficiency of courage. On the other end, there was recklessness, too much courage. What was called for what we require then was a golden mean, the right amount. That's what temperance or moderation is about, doing nothing in excess, doing the right thing in the right amount in the right way, because we are what we do repeatedly do. Aristotle also said, therefore, excellence is not an act, but a habit. In other words, virtue and excellence is a way of living. It's foundational. It's like an operating system, and the code this system operates on is habit. They say that anything you do for 30 days becomes a habit. I noticed when I started going to the gym, doing workouts, running every day or every morning, it became easier to do. It became part of your day. It wasn't something you had to set time aside for. It actually became just something you do. So whether it's meditation, whether it's sitting down for X amount of time a day or a week to read various lessons or various things to work through, reading through psychology books to let you know about the ego and the id, various things to help you temper yourself, I would say this can definitely become a habit for you. As Epictetus would later say, capability is confirmed and grows in its corresponding actions, walking by walking and running by running. Therefore, if you want to do something, make a habit of it. So if we want to be happy, if we want to be successful, if we want to be great, we have to develop the capability. We have to develop the day-to-day habits that allow this to ensue. This is great news because it means that impressive results or enormous changes are possible without Herculean effort or magic formulas. Small adjustments, good systems, the right processes, that's all it takes. So if you think, again, the metaphor, let's say you wake up in the morning normally at 7 and you want to start getting healthier. Wake up at 6:30, go for a 30-minute jog, come home, shower, start your day. The first month, maybe even the first 60 days, you are going to have to force yourself to do this. It is not going to be easy. But once it becomes a part of your day, your new day starts at 6:30 or 6 o'clock if you go to the gym, whatever. If you have a bad habit, such as drinking to excess, smoking, things like that, the first week or 2 or 3 or 4 may be completely miserable for you. And that is where most people give up, or they have a moment of weakness and they give in later on. And instead of making the mistake of having one and then saying, oh man, I just screwed up, I've got to stop here, they say, well, I just bought this pack, I'll finish this pack and then I'll stop. Or I just bought this 12 pack, I'll finish the 12 pack and then I'll stop. No, you could finish that one, call it a loss at the $5 or $10 that you spent over that you're not going to use, throw the darn things away and move on. But too many times people don't do that. And I think that is a problem. So if you do want to improve yourself, it is difficult at first, but easier as you go. Justice, being brave, finding the right balance. These are core Stoic virtues, but in their seriousness, they pale in comparison to what Stoics worshipped most highly, doing the right thing. There's no Stoic virtue more important than justice because it influences all others. Marcus Aurelius himself said that justice is the source of all the other virtues. Stoics throughout history have pushed and advocated for justice, oftentimes at great personal risk and with great courage, in order to do the things they and defend the people and ideas that they loved. Cato gave his life trying to restore the Roman Republic. And Teresa and Agrippinus gave theirs resisting the tyranny of Nero. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson formed a new nation, one of which would seek, however imperfectly, to fight for democracy and justice, largely inspired by the philosophy of Cato and those other Stoics. Thomas Wentworth Higginson, a translator of Epictetus, I wish they'd quit giving me that name, I have such a hard time with it. Epictetus led a black regiment of troops into the Civil War. Beatrice Webb, who helped found the London School of Economics and who first conceptualized the idea of a collective bargaining, regularly reread Marcus Aurelius. Countless other activists and politicians have turned to Stoicism to grid them against the difficulty of fighting for ideals that mattered, to guide them towards what was right in a world of so much wrong. A Stoic must deeply believe that an individual can make a difference. Successful activism and political maneuvering require understanding and strategy, as well as realism and hope. It requires wisdom, acceptance, and also refusal to accept the status quo. You know, when you look at the current, and I'm using current events because I think it's timely, but when you look at the current events and you look at, in many of the Democratic cities, the mayors and the mayors and sometimes in some cases the police commissioners and the governors, they are bowing down to the mob mentality. They do not have any courage. They are not willing to step up and say, look, we do not align with your ideals. And maybe they do, but nonetheless, the mob is not doing what's best for society. They're actually tearing down their own areas of the city, which does no good for anyone. So not only are they lacking courage, but the one thing the mobs do have is they feel that they are justified. They feel they are justified. They feel they are working on the right side of justice. And because of that, their convictions are very strong, and they are very loud, and they are very dedicated to their cause. Whether you agree with them or not, they think they're in the right. And so because of this, they are now activists, and they are using successful activism and political maneuvering, and they're using this as strategy to get what they want, and it's working. Now, to counter this, we have to do the same, or those of us that want it countered have to do the same. You have to be able to use some form of justice or some form of a grouping people under the same cause to fight it. And as they say here, it's something that you do individually. But what it takes is for the cancel culture, for example, that is plowing through, whether it's jobs, social media, so on and so forth. It takes people to stand up and say, you have no right to do this to me. And if you do this to me, I will file a lawsuit. I will tell the world what you've done to me, and I'm going to complain about it. And if those people had just as loud a voice or louder than the cancel culture themselves, cancel culture would end. But there is no bravado and there is no justice on this side, because they feel if I quietly sit here and wait, it will pass by and it'll fizzle out. It is not. But these are one of the things that, we need to think about. It was James Baldwin who most brilliantly captured this tension in Notes of a Native Son. He says, it began to seem that one would have to hold in mind forever two ideas which seemed to be in opposition. The first idea was acceptance. The acceptance, the total without rancor, of life as it is, and men as they are. In light of this idea, it goes without saying that injustice is commonplace, but that did not mean that one could be complacent. For the second idea was of equal power, that one must never in one's own life accept these injustices as commonplace, but one must fight them with all one's strength. I put a video out several months ago about the power of yes versus no. And if you look for the thumbnail, it's got like a green and red up and down thumb. It didn't get much attention. But one of the things I talked about in there is the power of saying no. That no is actually much more powerful than saying yes to things. When somebody tries to get you to do something you don't agree with, you say no. If someone tries to make you do something or you want to disagree with them, you say no. You give pushback. You need boundaries as a man. As a person, you need to have boundaries. You need to stick up for yourself. You need to be strong. You need to fight. You need to be proud of yourself. And a lot of times people will call that narcissism or arrogance. It's not when it's done the correct way. When it's done without malice, and when it's done without anger, and when it's done without hurting other people's ideas, and you just stand firm. That would be a good instance of having some to be able to stand up for yourself. So having those ideas, the powers of seeing, well, they say here, seeing the world clearly and standing up for your convictions, that is part of Stoicism. A Stoic sees the world clearly, but also sees clearly what the world can be. And then they are brave and strategic enough to help bring into reality. Wisdom. Courage, temperance, and justice. These are the critical virtues of life. But what situations call for courage? What's the right amount? What's the right thing? This is where the final and essential virtue comes in wisdom, the knowing, the learning, the experience required to navigate the world. Wisdom has always been prized by the Stoics. Zeno said that we are given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, to listen more than we talk. And since we have 2 eyes, we are obligated to read and observe more than we talk as well. When you guys, and not all of you, you're just a handful of you, but many of you have said to me, have said, you know what, I'm never going to have a female friend. Women friends are worthless. There's certainly a challenge, I will say that, and many of us don't believe in having relationships. But take that view versus kind of what the girl power movement does. Does the girl power movement have wisdom? No, because when you try to have a rational discussion with them, they berate you, they call you names, they ree at you, they scream at you, and they shut you down. That takes no wisdom. Do they have courage? Yes, I would say they're quite brave in how loud they are, but that is as a group. If they were the outsider and no one else felt the same way they did, would they still speak up? I doubt it. And what about temperance and justice? No, they don't look for equality. They don't look for ways that men and women can work together. They want to dominate. They want to control, and they want to overpower. That has nothing to do with Stoicism. But the Stoic man, what he does is he understands his, so to speak, enemy. He understands his opponent, would maybe be a better way at it. And by understanding the way women think, the way they feel, the way that they view the world, what they want from you in a relationship, what they find important, you can find value in that. Now, maybe you don't find a value in it as a friendship. Maybe you don't find value in that even as a relationship. But you can find value in that in understanding how the other side views you. And that gives you more, power is not the right word, but it gives you more of an understanding of how other people tick and how they think. And when you understand that, it gives you a better, just one more kind of thing to drop into your bag of knowledge that lets you navigate the world more comfortably and without any issues. Maybe I'll leave it that way for you. Wisdom has always been prized by Stoics. Oh, I already read that. It is key today, as it was in the ancient world, to be able to distinguish between the vast aggregations of information that lay out there at your disposal and the actual wisdom that you need to live a good life. It's key that we study, that we keep our minds always open. You cannot learn that which you think you already know. It's true. And a good way to think about this again is learning the other side. You know, in chess, when you play, white has an opening. Well, there's gambits and there's defenses for the black and the white side to play. And so when white opens, there's a counter move. And they've worked out progressions as to which is the way to to defend against a certain opening. Well, how do you learn to defend against a certain opening? Is you practice them and you learn them, and there are a multitude of ways to do them. And depending on your skill level is how many moves into it you know and how many variations you know. But you have to learn what the other side can do before you can make your move. And this is kind of the same thing today with wisdom, is by learning the other side. A well-rounded man understands the position from every angle. And again, I know I've touched on politics, but it comes in politics, it comes in relationships between the sexes, between race, between tall, short, between everything is wisdom. And it's being able to meter out the truth and meter out what's useful from what's not useful. When you hear the news today, is that real news? Is it not real news? Is there any information that I need there? Or is it opinion? This all boils down to wisdom. And you can quickly see who has the wisdom and who doesn't. Because you will find that they are very quick to be able to say, you know what, I was wrong. I could have done that differently. Or, I did not know that. Thank you. I will learn from that. Versus the other side of, I don't care what you say. I only listen to this, or I disagree with everything over here, or sticking the fingers in your ears and screaming at the top of your lungs so you don't have to hear what the other person says. That's wisdom. And it's not being taught much anymore. It seems society does not want Stoics. They do not want people that are independent thinkers and strong and able to come up with their own ideas and to back them up with logic and science and history, so on and so forth. Something that you guys need to be prepared for is to be able to say, hey, how do I navigate this? How do I learn? How do I know? And that takes practice. He said, which is why we need not only to be humble students, but also seek out great teachers. It's why we should always be reading. It's why we cannot stop training. It's why we have to be diligent in filtering out the signal from the noise. And this is where I say get off social media, stop following all this stuff, stop listening to it. Listen to the news from all sides, even the ones you disagree with, and the ones that you sit there and finding yourself getting frustrated and angry about. Listen to them. Try to see that the angle that they are coming at you from, no matter what side that is, and learn from it. Now, it doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but if you can't even sit through it and listen to it, how can you properly argue against or defend or see the side where they're coming against you from? You find yourself aligned a certain way, and you find that you're not able to look at things clearly. And again, it doesn't mean that you don't pick sides, but at least understand what the other side's coming from so you can form a defense against it, if nothing else. Thousands of years of blazing insight are available to the world. It's likely that you have the power to learn anything you want at your fingertips. So today, in honor of the Stoic virtue of wisdom, by slowing down, being deliberate, and finding the wisdom you need. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, remain a student, act according and wisely. And then they go through here a bunch of books on Stoicism, and again, I'll leave this links below. We're here for a finite amount of time. And when you're young, it always seems ahead of you. It always seems in front of you. You have all the time in the world. But as you age, you quickly realize you have to filter out the negative from the positive and try to make every moment you have count for something. I wish I knew that when I was 20. But then again, I might not have ever seen it because I may not have gone through half the life that I've gone through. But when you see that earlier and you can learn from this stuff earlier, it allows you to be a more moderated, a more well-adjusted, and a happier person. And I may even, I don't know if I'll ever do a series on some of these Stoics and talk more in theory on this stuff. But we're here for a while. None of us get out of it alive. Don't take it all too seriously, but learn what you can from it and make something positive out of it. And so, guys, I'll kind of wrap it up here. And I know this is a little bit of a dry read, but I wanted to kind of give you an oversight and some of the lessons that I've taken away from this. Is that if you can look at things from all sides, even if you don't agree with them, if you can look at things from all sides, allow voices from all sides, even if you don't agree with them, listen to them, try to understand where they're coming from, even if you don't agree with them, and get an understanding of things. The deeper the understanding you have, either the more you change, or your mind is changed, or the more secure you can be in your own convictions. Neither one is bad. So once you've done this, you can become a very strong and dedicated and knowledgeable individual. And I think that's important. Being brave, trying new things, making your life all about the various experiences are out there. Nothing makes me sadder than hearing somebody that grew up, married their high school sweetheart. They worked a 9 to 5. They had 3 kids or 2 kids, whatever. They grew up into their 65 or 70 or whatever, retired, and then lived in their hometown and maybe went to the local Walmart and died in their sleep at the age of 85. They got to see 0.00001% of life. Nothing is more exciting than going and seeing other countries, other cultures, learning about how the world works, how you're viewed, how you view things. There's so many things out there to explore that I'm hoping the more you fill your lives with these different experiences and these different flavors of life, the more beautiful it will be for you. And of course, that's why I do some of these videos that are a little bit more serious and a little bit harder to chew through. And then I toss a video out about how a girl, I don't know, paid $20,000 for her bobs or whatever, because it has to be fun. We have to have a laugh. We can't take it all too seriously. But then there are other times where we need to say, hey, what are we all here for? Where am I going? What is my goal? How do I get there? And how can I milk the most enjoyment out of my life? So guys, I'd love to see your comments down below. Please leave some quotes, leave some links to things that you like about Stoicism. Any questions you have, I'll try to answer a little bit for. If there's enough of them, maybe I'll do another video about it. And if you made it through this far, I appreciate it. Guys, if you'd like to support my work, links are below as always. And if you have, thank you very much. We've got about 500 members now over on my locals.com page. Join me over there. The links are below. A membership is free. You can come on and read the forums. And if you'd like to join and sign up and post and things like that, it's $3 a month. But you can link to your stories. You can make posts. It's kind of like our own Reddit forum page just for us. So the first month is free if you'd like to become a supporter. And if you'd like to become a member, that's always for free. Guys, I'll leave it there. This is Better Bachelor. I'm Joker. And remember, Stoicism is deep. It is not easy to chew through. It is probably one of the hardest philosophical theories to move through and absorb and to learn and to understand. But once you have a good grasp on it, you will find your life is exponentially easier and you will find joy in almost everything you do.